Okay, we're live. Good evening, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us on this special episode of The Life of Hair. Now, for a long time, I have been meaning to make some episodes, live episodes, bringing on some fantastic guests like Denise here, that not necessarily going to tell you anything about how to cut a bob, perm a wig, or do a full set of highlights, because our industry is a lot more complicated and dense than that, and there's actually not many people giving people like Denise the platform that she deserves. And so therefore you might have seen in one of my recent videos, I gave Denise a shout out because she's been helping me with my new business and helping me with some lease stuff for a studio that I'm now setting up for you guys, so that for you and me really, because obviously I want somewhere that we can call home. I'm just going to pop a few things up on screen. Kulur couldn't be with us this evening, no worries, you'll catch it up later. Thank you very much. And Ziv, hello James, hello Ziv. So it's going to be a bit of an interesting one. If you're watching this long into the future, then some of the information may or may not be relevant, but I'm sure Denise will come back on and tell us more. Now, hello Christos from Greece, hi Pia. So hi Angela. So we have, I met digitally, I've never met Denise in real life, on a thing called Clubhouse. For those of you who do or don't know about Clubhouse, it's a invitation only, which sounds fancier than it is, invitation only audio app, social media app. It's a bit like joining in a live podcast or a radio show. Anyway, Sunday nights, we were talking about how to elevate yourself. We've now brought that onto YouTube with Lee Stafford. But Denise was a fantastic, wonderful guest when we were over on Clubhouse and brought some really valuable information of the legalities of being a hair salon owner, and just generally kind of open people's eyes to maybe the employment scenario that you're in isn't necessarily to the book. And it could be very interesting for some of you guys who are watching this now or later, to really rethink the way that you operate going forward, especially for those of you who may want to be freelancers and get the right kind of contract and make sure that you are being cut a fair deal. Because I don't know about you, I'm going to talk from my perspective only, but you guys might be more enlightened than me. When I went to college, they taught me how to cut hair, color hair, and that was about it. They didn't really teach me anything to do with business. They didn't give me any insights into how I might open a salon, close a salon, sell a salon, rent a space to create a salon, or any of the actual really important things if you want to elevate your career to a place of which, a lot of us aspire when we're young to do these things, and they seem very daunting. And I think me personally, I'm a great believer in finding people who can answer these questions for you. And fate had it that Denise here was destined, and where destiny headbutted us, drove us straight into each other. And I met Denise at exactly the right time, and that's happened to me a lot recently. There's something very strange going on in the universe. I'm not really sure what it is, but anyway, I'm going with it. But Denise is part of that, and I really wanted you guys to have Denise in your phone contacts should you need her. Now, Denise, from your perspective, give everyone an insight into, what you do, what you can do, and where you are and how you can help.
So I run the company Fine Surveyors, and we specialize in negotiating leases for salon owners. So what I do is I will value the lease, the premises that you're going to take on, and I will negotiate specifically for that individual salon owner a lease that's going to represent the type of business that they want to operate throughout the length of time of that period. So it's very specialist. It's very dependent on the person. I get to know them as a person and how they want to run their business in order to make sure that they have the perfect lease for them. And, sometimes some of the salon owners will come to me if they've got a problem with their landlord too. We also discuss about whether or not they have the right agreements in place, shall we say, if they have other people working within their salon, say they have chair rental schemes, or they have separate maybe beauty therapists working within different areas of their salon. Then we'll discuss with them whether or not they've got the right agreements in place in order for them to be able to operate. But anything to do with property within your business is something that we would deal with direct with the salon owner.
Good stuff. Well, something you said there really it rings strikes true with me. I would be really interested to get some thoughts and insights from you, Denise, on the kind of self-employed hairdresser, the rent-a-chair hairstylist as we've come to know it. Because obviously, and I'm saying obviously because it's not always obvious, I hate that word, but there's been some big changes in that area of either being a stylist or being an employer of stylists under that rent-a-chair style. So, you know, if for instance, for the watchers out there listening in on this or watching us, and you know, you're thinking about moving salon and you want to maybe go freelance and you want to run your own time, Denise, what are the things that people should really be looking out for?
Yeah, so a lot of the conversations that we have at the moment is about IR35, which has nothing to do with property law, but it is tax. And that's actually been in since 2000, 2001. So it's a very old legislation. But because now we've been through COVID and the government have all of your details as to where you've been working and how you've been paid and everything, and you've declared all of that, they're now going to have the information about whether or not you could potentially be a hidden employee. And a hidden employee would be seen as somebody who has been working under the control of the salon owner. So that's where I come in. If you are running your own business within somebody else's salon, then you need to have a lease or a license. So you need to have an agreement that covers English or UK property law. And the reason for that is because you automatically within UK law have property rights if you are operating within a commercial property space. So if as a salon owner, say within your studio, James, you decided that you would have someone else working in the other chair that you're not using, and you decided that you weren't going to have the proper agreement in place and you were going to put in a self-employed agreement, which is what we hear about a lot when we're having discussions about this. You employ them as self-employed and then you treat them as if they're not self-employed. There's lots of different legislations that you are then going to be falling foul of. So for me, it's the British property law. So automatically, if you are paying somebody to use a space within their salon, then you get automatic property rights. And it would be, regardless of whether or not the salon owner had the lease in place and everything was in their name, you would automatically have legal rights of occupation within that salon. So the salon owner would then lose their rights. But they could avoid that by putting in a lease or a license, depending on, you know, what the scenario is, to protect those rights. So then there's situations where you could ask the person to leave, or they could break the lease, or you can review it, or if they've broken any of the terms of the lease or license, then you can, you know, ask them to leave. That would protect it. But if you have nothing in place and you just have an employment contract in place or a self-employed contract in place, but they are actually operating a business and paying you rent, even if the rent is in commission, it would still count because it's a payment for that space. So you need to make sure that you have some sort of legal property agreement in place, even if you also have a self-employed agreement in place. I would argue that you don't need a self-employed agreement in place because it is a property transaction, because it's a separate business working within your salon. Also, if you are then controlling that person, so they have to tell you when they're having sick leave, or they have to ask for holidays, or they have to come in at a certain time, or you book in their clients, or, you know, all of those different scenarios. And one of the major ones to think about is whether or not that person could substitute their work. So say, for instance, you, James, were working in someone else's salon and you said, oh, actually, I'm not coming in next Thursday, but, you know, my mate Bob is qualified and everything. He's going to come in and do all of my clients. It's your business operating in your time, in your space within that salon, and that should be something that you have the legal right to do. If that salon owner then said that, no, I'm not accepting that, then they're essentially treating you as an employee. So then that would be an employment tribunal issue. And then you'd be looking at issues with who's paid the tax, IR35, whether or not they've given you the holiday payments that they should have and everything like that. So we've had recent case law where salons, again, and it is traditionally salons that get caught out by this, have been found to be hiding employment for people. Again, so there's a lady in Sheffield, I think it was, a lady in Sheffield, who again had years and years of holidays and I think it was holidays, sick pay, and it might have even been in maternity leave or whatever it was, all had to be paid back to her by her employer because she was a hidden employee.
Yeah, I mean, for anybody that you know, that's a lot of stuff to digest. Just think of it like this: if you're an employee out there, and you know your boss is effectively you know, got you as a freelancer, not paying you holidays, not paying you, you know, essentially not paying you all these things, but then stipulating the hours you must work and you must ask for holidays with, you know, those that's when it all becomes a bit sticky, you know, and you should really maybe, you know, reach out to someone like Denise. But if you're a salon owner and you are employing your staff under those guys as well, and you're not aware that you have hidden employees, there can be financial implications that you'll have to pay them holiday, sick leave, all those things backdated to throughout their employment. So I think, yeah, I mean, I've heard, you know, people in our clubhouse chats where, you know, Denise has kind of pointed this out to salon owners, and they've had no idea that.
And for me, my biggest concern would be losing rights over your salons. That's your brand, that's your business. If you've ran that salon for years, but you just have some chairs that you let out to people, and they could essentially take that space as their own, and you had no control over it because you didn't have the right paperwork in place. I just would implore people to not put themselves in that position and make sure that from day one they have the right agreements in place. Because yes, you still have to treat them as they are their own business. But if you have that paperwork in place and you have that framework of how they can operate in that salon, then that's the basis that you have to stick by and have all those rules and regulations in place. And that way you are automatically setting the framework in place, protecting your salon, and then giving that new business guidance of how they can then work within your salon.
Yeah, I mean, it's an area. It's an area of which, you know, until I started listening to Denise on Clubhouse, I just didn't have a Scooby-Doo exactly. I knew that it wasn't right how a lot of people operated, but I didn't have a Scooby-Doo how, you know, the right way of going about it was, and was there a right way? I mean, in my lifetime as a professional hairdresser, I've been a hidden employee at least 3 times now. And not that I'm bothered specifically, you know, but, you know, I do feel like, you know, it should be set up, you know, better, and it should be clearer, but it's not. And that's why we all need Denise in our little black books, so we can give her a shout and say, is this right? Now, I think it's you know, it's interesting you say here about you know, the kind of employment legislation, you know, in terms of, you know, the legalities of leases and all those kind of things, which can all feel a bit scary and a bit strange to people that aren't necessarily, you know, used to dealing with anything that is legal within. And so what rights does somebody have if they feel like they are a secret employee to go to the person that they work for? And how would they come to someone like you first, Denise, and say, I feel like I'm a secret employee, you would then point out whether they were or weren't. How would they kind of then, would you best recommend they approach their prospective boss to let them know?
Yeah, I mean, I think what I would say to people is that I would go to the boss and ask for a lease or a license for the space that you are renting. So if you are exchanging money for space within a salon, then you are renting the space, and you are legally allowed or legally have the right to ask for a lease or a license. If So the lease and license, let me explain that. If you have exclusive possession over an area, so essentially if the door locks, nobody else has access to it, then that has to be a lease. If it's an area where people can use it at different times or they cross through it, then traditionally that's probably going to be a license in place. If it's a lease, within the first 3 years of you having that space, the landlord, so the salon owner, has to legally grant you a lease. So if you've been working somewhere and exchanging that space for money for a certain amount of time and it's coming up to those 3 years, have that discussion with the landlord to say, or the salon owner to say, I want a lease that protects me and my rights and protects you and your rights, so that we know what we want to do if ever we want to part company. And we can set things out in stone as to how things are going to do. It's a little bit more difficult for a license because that doesn't necessarily have to be in writing. So I would say to the people, like, go to your landlord, your salon owner, and say to them, this is the best thing for both of us, because it sets out here that if I don't stick by the rules that you've set out, then you can get rid of me. And equally, if this isn't working for me, then I can hand in my notice and I can leave. But it gives us clear guidelines as to what we can and can't do, because at the minute I feel like you're treating me like an employee, and that isn't good for any of us because it's breaking so many of the different rules. And I don't want to fall foul of HMRC, which people are going to now because of COVID, because there's task forces already looking at all of the COVID applications to see whether or not people have been breaking the rules for all these years. So I would go to them and say, look, this is what I want to do. And then when it comes to that, come to people like me and say, I want a license or a lease drafted for this space. How can we do this so that both parties are happy? Now, because we're in the legal profession, we can only act for one party. So it's either going to be the landlord or the tenant. But it doesn't mean that there isn't somebody else that we can have those discussions with, as long as both parties understand that it's a legal agreement and they're signing it knowing that this is going to stay in place until it expires.
Here's an interest. So for you written within that lease, let's say you wanted to part company with that individual. You were, one of you guys out there were watching this as an employer, and you wanted to set up kind of a leasing scheme. If you wanted to part company with that person, what would the grounds and terms be for that to happen?
So it's a lot more complicated when it comes to commercial property, because you automatically get the right to renew your lease. So if you want to not give your tenant the automatic right to renew your lease, then you have to then contract that lease out of what we call the 1954 Act. So actually, when you were saying at the beginning that things might have changed over time, the laws in property have been around forever. The only thing that we've really had that's impacted us over the past 50-ish years is the COVID Act 2020, and that's the only thing that's changed for us. So probably this is all going to be accurate, but check at the time that you're watching this. But what you would do in a commercial property is you would just then make sure that both parties sign a statutory declaration that says that both of you are happy for there not to be an automatic renewal of the lease. So that has to be done. But if that isn't done, then you automatically have the right to renew your lease at the end of it. So if you have a 5-year lease, you can apply for another 5-year lease. You just have to serve notice on each other. So you have to be careful of that. If you want to avoid that for your people that you are renting to within your salon, then you need to make sure that you have a contracted out lease. But within that lease, if you do want something that's shorter or longer, then all of it's negotiable. Nothing's standard. It has to be very tailored to the people that are working within that lease, or within that salon, sorry.
It's super interesting. I mean, it really interests me because I feel like there's lots of problems in our industry with professionalism, especially from the employment side. I appreciate that your speciality is the legalities of leasing properties generally, but I think you will have heard and experienced a lot of indiscrepancy of what's kosher and what's not within our industry. And so to hear it from a professional's perspective, for anybody that is wondering about Denise, what took you, what's your formal background, Denise, and what brought you into the hair industry to kind of help out?
So I've been a commercial property surveyor for about 15 years now, and I worked for the landlord side for about 10 years. And then about 5 years ago, I specialised into salon owners and came over to help tenants. But before I did that, I was working on government contracts and advising government on their property portfolio and saving them some big money.
Crazy. Interesting. Here's a random thing that I've always wondered how this works. Let's say you own a salon and you want to sell that salon. How do you come up with a price, a valuation, a kind of, a way of moving that business forward?
So the first thing that I would say is that you need to make sure that you've got at least 2 to 3 years left on your lease, because that's the valuable part of it. The fixtures and fittings, they depreciate the second they're in that salon. So yes, they're going to have value to the person who is buying it, but they're going to have absolutely zero value if it doesn't come with the actual lease. So make sure that if you have less than 2 to 3 years, that you renew your lease before you even think about getting it valued, because that's going to be one of the major assets. And then what you need to do is there's specialist companies out there who will value the whole salon. So make sure before you go to those people, because they will charge you a fortune to renew your lease, go to a surveyor that's going to sort out the lease, knowing that you're going to sell it. So they're going to have all of the parts of the lease that you need to have in. The right to assign the lease, which is the right to then sell it on and assign that lease to the new company. But yeah, there's specialist companies out there that do valuations on salons throughout the whole country. And there's really good ones. Get a few of them that will go in and value. And what they look at is they look at the past 3 years accounts. So make sure they are geared to selling the salon too. So you need a good few years of knowing that that is your plan. Because as business owners, what we do is we try to strip out all the profit and put it back into the business, which is traditional. That's how we do it. That's the most tax efficient way of doing things. But if you're going to sell, you need your accounts to show clear profit for 3 years. You need to have 2 to 3 years worth in your lease, and then get a specialist company in, and they'll value that for you.
Interesting. That's great advice. Yeah. There's so many random things that, unless you ask somebody, you just don't know, do you? So this is all really,
The thing is, I've never even thought about advising people on that, because it was, being in the industry for such a long time, it was just automatic to me that you sell, but it was only during COVID that people were left, right and center saying, I don't want to do this anymore, the lease is coming to an end, I'm just going to get rid of it. And I'd be like, the lease is coming to an end, you're just going to get rid of it. So you're going to spend money stripping that salon out, you're going to lose all your clients, but you have the right to remain in that salon. Why don't you just renew the lease and sell everything with the fixtures and fittings? Even if you can't be asked, getting the accounts perfect, it's still going to have a value. Don't just walk away, because there's a value in that asset. So that's the only reason I ever say to people, this is the best way to do it. But even if you can't do the best, you can still sell that asset for money. Don't just walk away.
That's really interesting, isn't it? I don't know if you guys sitting there watching this are your brain's whirring, but it kind of gets me thinking, because I think it's a big move for some people to see themselves owning a salon because of all the kind of paperwork and legislation. But because I know now there's people out there like you, Denise, it makes it all feel a lot more doable, you know, because I know people send me DMs weekly saying, you know, I love being a hairdresser, but I hate being in a salon. I love being a hairdresser, but I hate my boss. I love being a hairdresser, but, you know, this and that and the other. And a lot more people have come to me looking to do freelance style or open a salon or, you know, take on a small unit and create something small somewhere. And so, you know, this is really, guys, for anybody that's watching right now and didn't see the start of this, it's really why I wanted Denise to come on, so you guys could have Denise in your telephone books. And at the end of this, what we'll do is I'll give you Denise's Instagram, and you can go.
I thought you were going to say phone number then. I was like,
I'm going to give her your phone. Yeah, I'm going to pass out her phone number on the internet. She's going to be bombarded with spam calls.
I heard you do.
But no, I'll give out her Instagram at the end of this. I'll write it in the comment section down below. And then you guys can, you know, get in touch if you think there's anything that Denise can help you with. Now, you know, these really kind of, for me, I'm liking the perspective of, you know, answering really some of the questions for the people out there who are thinking about kind of branching out on their own. So, you know, it's a daunting task, and, you know, all the rest of it, trying to find a space and really go alone on this journey. But you're not alone, because, you know, there are people out there to help you.
Yeah, like there's so many salon mentors and coaches, and, you know, all the different parts of the business. You really can get lots of help if you go out there and look.
100%. And so, Denise, let's say, right, from the perspective of, you know, somebody who's sitting here watching this now and they're inspired by some of the stuff you said, and they're now scrolling through their phone trying to find a space nearby, you know, and thinking about opening a salon. What do they do when they find that space? What's the next step to make sure that they're going to get the best possible deal?
Rewind. First of all, be absolutely clear on who you serve before you even look for a salon, because so many people come to me and they think that they need a high street salon because that's what everyone's always done, or they're the salons that they've always worked in. And that may well work for a certain demographic, but if you are, you know, vivid color specialist who, you know, is so niche in their industry, then your people will go anywhere for you. So don't pay the high prices of the insane high streets when you could be in a back street somewhere with a fully booked salon paying half the rent. So know who your market is first, is the most important thing. Then move on to where they want you to be. Yeah, okay, you might have a set, if your niche is the type of person who would only go to a high street salon, then you know then that's what you have to go for. You know that the rents are going to be high. Then you also know that the prices are going to have to be high. So that's another cool thing. But do that work first. Don't do what you think everyone else wants you to do. Do what your ideal client wants you to do. That's the first thing I'm going to say. Then obviously look everywhere around and find the salons that are available. There are lots available at the minute, and their rents are really easy to negotiate because there's lots been going on. We've lost nearly 7,000 salons this year, which is insane. But there's so many people wanting to get into the industry because COVID's given them permission to do the things that they've wanted to do for years. So if that is your desire, go for it now, is what I'd say. But really, really, really look around. Make sure that you know that you can afford the rents, the service charge, the rates, utilities, everything. Like, really crunch your numbers. And if that salon looks like it's going to be okay, then look for a surveyor. And this is when I'm going to do the whole surveyor stroke solicitor conversation. Everyone's going to say to you, get the lease checked out by solicitor, but you need to know that solicitor isn't qualified to value the lease. They're not qualified to negotiate the terms of the lease. What they are qualified to do is tell you whether or not that lease is legally binding. So if you haven't already negotiated all of the terms, you haven't made sure that that rent's great for you, you haven't made sure that all of the terms within that lease is perfect for you and your new business, then you're in hiding for nothing already. So go to a surveyor and make sure that they value the lease, that it's the right rent for that salon, that the landlord hasn't picked a number out of the air, which happens more often than you can ever imagine. And really make sure that those numbers are accurate and that the terms are going to work for you, because you're going to need the flexibility that you need in your business, not that your old salon used to have, or not the lease that your landlord wants to give you, because every business is completely different. So you need the flexibility that you want in your business. And then they're the steps that you need to go through. You won't necessarily ever have to even touch a solicitor, because a good surveyor will be able to do all of the parts for you.
And Denise is right here, guys. Here she is. This is a good surveyor. Okay.
For most people, but for some people, I'm not the right person, but I'll be able to push you towards the right person.
That's it. It's about who you know, isn't it? So this is Hobus Pobus, but I call it Hippopotibus because that's how I pronounce it. Mr. Stark didn't know you were live. Yeah, this was kind of an ad hoc special. So we were just kind of, we'll catch the beginning later. Hi, everyone. I have a question. I don't know if you botched it, but broached it, sorry. But we're talking about garage conversions as a first salon. Tell us all about that, Denise, because I've heard you talk about that before.
I have. The things that you need to think about are planning permission. So will you require a change of use? And that's usually about degree in fact. So how much of the home has been changed? Will it just be for a business, or will it also be for some pleasure? And then you'll need to get either change of use, or sometimes the council give you, what do they call it? Basically, it's the right to occupy it as a salon. So that's what you're going to need to think about. Also, you'll need to check with your mortgage company as to whether or not they'll allow you to do that, and whether or not you need to then change your mortgage deal to be able to do it. Do all of those first, because so many people make all of the changes, then get caught, especially when they are probably doing a remortgage. That's when they tend to get caught. So do it first before you change it. But you also need to think about your ideal client. Is your ideal client the type of person who wants to go into a garage salon? If they are, go for it. It sounds like an amazing way to start out. If they're not, think really, really carefully about whether or not you're going to have the right amount of people coming into there to justify the cost and all of the change of use, and the fact that you're going to have to do everything with your mortgage company, and factor in how long it takes the mortgage company to come back to you, because that can be a considerable amount of time as well. But yeah, I mean, if your ideal client is the type of person that would go to a garage conversion, go for it.
Good stuff. Thank you for that. Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because I think a lot of people have opened salons in their garages, or they've put them in their back garden, and just kind of gone for gold and not necessarily put the right things in place. So here's the thing, right? Let's say someone's sitting here now watching, and they're thinking to themselves, oh my God, I've opened a salon in my garage, I've built a salon in the garden, but they haven't put all the things into place, and they don't know what to do. They don't really, where do they go? Where do they go for that advice?
First things first, speak to planning and see whether or not you need to have a change of use, because they are generally really kind about things like this. If you go to them and admit that you changed it without thinking about it, they can be really kind about it. And quite often they just do a change of use really quickly. It's not called a change of use, but it's the right to operate. I can't remember what they call it, but whatever it is, they can do that pretty easily. Once you've done that, then master the mortgage company. I mean, you might own the property outright, which is that would be an amazing result. If not, if you're going to find yourself having to remortgage, because some mortgage companies absolutely do not allow you to do any business use at all within any of their properties. So planning first, I would say, then go to your mortgage company. If it's in the garden, you don't tend to have those same problems. So if it's garage, I would definitely go through that process. with the garden rooms, you don't tend to have a change of use if it's not purely for business. So I've got an office in my garden that's being built, but that will also be space because it's going to have a gin bar in it, obviously, James, because I'm massively into my gin.
Gin fanatic.
Gin fanatic. And it's also going to be like a space for my teenage kids as well. So it's not 100% change of use. So I don't need planning permission for that. So gardens, less so, as long as it has multi-use. If it's purely for business, especially if you've put it through the books, you're going to need planning permission.
Good stuff. Thank you very much. Angela says it's about the talent, not the decor. Very good, Angela. Love it. Bradford Leonard says, have you had a conflict with other workers in the salon? If so, did this affect your work? And did you learn how to deal with it? Did you eventually leave? Keep it good work. I'm assuming that's directed at me, as you've never worked in a salon.
I have actually.
Have you?
I did when I was a teenager.
Oh, really? Wow. Did you have any conflict?
No, I don't think so.
No, I've never specifically had conflict. I've had people, over the years, that I've not got on with for one reason or another. I can be, at work when I've been a creative director of quite a few salons now. And, when you're in that role, you don't always, not everybody wants to come on the journey. They're at different points in their lives. But I've always worked a way around it. I've always found a different angle and I've always learnt from it. So, yes, I have had conflict, but not through, animosity. It's more because I've seen something in somebody that I want to kind of help extract, and they've not necessarily been at that point in their journey. Or it's been that, I've had to, up their skills because they're getting lots of complaints. And it's not easy to, when somebody is in that situation and they're getting lots of complaints and they need upskilling fast and they also need telling about these complaints. So I always try and play, and that's really, I think, to be fair to these situations, always being education first. I've never been business first. I've been education first, business second. And I truly believe if you educate people, then we don't have to worry about the business as much. Still needs tweaking, but it's good staff, will look after their clients. The Richard Branson style, look after your employees and they'll look after your clients. So that's always been my approach. But not everybody, when people need emergency help, and they're doing the same things over and over again, they're not always in the right frame of mind. And for me, the secret to that, Bradford, is about rebranding or repositioning the problem. So, for instance, let's say over time and time again, the balayages are off key. Going to someone and saying your balayage is off key because you're getting complaints, they know that. But then if we go to them and say, okay, well, how about we look at why don't we take an afternoon and look at root stretching from a different perspective, things that might solve their problems that they're currently having, rather than hammering on about the actual problem. And that can be enough to sort of crack the nut. But I've not ever left anywhere personally because of conflict. And I can't honestly hold my hand on my heart and say I felt like anybody's left because we've been, back and forth about something. But we've seemed to have worked through it every time. I think it's just how you approach it. There are a lot of pig-headed salon owners out there that also don't follow employment law very well either. And I think that results in, it's true though, it results in conflict, and that results in people leaving or leaving the industry altogether, which is, a complete disaster in my opinion.
I think being a business owner is a journey though, and the business owner that you were last year could be different to the business owner that you are now because you know more. So we all need to go through certain struggles and, conflicts in order to be able to better ourselves. This is why we have these conversations, so we can learn. And it would be the same if we were having a conversation about, conflict resolution. We would think, oh, I didn't deal with that very well. But also, as a business owner, I'm also not always there to be liked either. Sometimes I have to do the hard things because it's only fair on the people that work for me. So it's sometimes it's a thankless task, and we just have to do the best that we can do with the knowledge that we've got at the time that we're doing it.
100%. Yeah, that's it. You can only act in the moment, can't you? Or act with foresight would be a wonderful thing, but we don't always have that with us doing. No. So Tony Candy says, very informative. Thank you. You're welcome. Thanks, Tony. Denise is a font of knowledge. Don't be a slave to overpriced landlords, says Angela.
As long as it's been valued properly.
Claiming as a business makes the property tax higher. I think that's to do with in your home, I think, potentially.
Well, yes. So the mortgage company may well ask you to pay a higher interest rate.
Yeah. Rubbish. CA says, what job do you do? Maybe let's give people a recap, because I know some people have joined. So Denise, what are you?
I am a commercial property surveyor.
There we go. That's what Denise is, and she is all things to do with the legalities of the property itself, leases, and also about being freelance. She helps with freelance people within businesses, because it's not as simple and straightforward as you think it would be. If you own a property outright, do you still need permission, says Pierre?
So if you're talking about going back to the garage thing, then yes, you would still need planning permission, but you wouldn't need the mortgage company's permission.
Right, good stuff. Yeah, okay. So you need to go to your council, but it doesn't matter about the bank.
Yeah, the council may say there's not a big enough change, so no, you don't need to, but double check, because you don't want to get shut down.
Right, cool stuff. So Hobus Pobus had mentioned earlier about starting in a garage here. Fascinating insight, thank you. My brother lives in a lucrative area, so it'd be in his garage. He's allowed it, but I'm sure didn't know all the mortgage stuff.
I love the mobile van. Yeah.
Yes. How about a mobile van? Well, do you know? Can't remember what it's called now, and the name of the chap that's gone straight in my head. But he's got like Airstream business. I don't know if you've come across him, Phil. It's gone out of my head. He started in Oxfordshire, and he converted an Airstream bus van thing into a hair salon, and he's now franchising it, actually.
Love it.
Yeah.
As a owner of a camper van, I would actively encourage people to do that, because I think it's an amazing idea. You just need to make sure that you understand your market really well. But yes, go for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, because in England, you don't need a license or anything. If you're in America, you do.
Yeah, good.
In certain states.
Yeah, I mean, there's all that in America. It's quite a different kettle of fish, isn't it? State by state. Right then, what job does she do for a living? I think we mentioned that already. CA
help salon owners.
Help salon owners. There we go. Yeah, help salon owners and people. Makes sense. Your salon is like a second family. Yeah. So, room within a house.
Yeah, that would be the same as a garage. You just need to make sure that it's not changing the use of the house. It shouldn't, unless you've got 2 rooms in the whole house and then 50% of it's taken over by a new salon. That you're going to need planning permission for that, because the degree in fact would be that the majority of the house has been taken over as a business. But like reflexology used in a spare room and stuff like that, you don't tend to need planning permission for that. You may well want to check with your mortgage company, but if you own it outright and you're only using part of the house, you probably won't need it. But go to your council anyway and ask the question. Keep the record that you've asked the question, and if they say no and anyone ever comes back and complains, you've got evidence.
Like it. April's asked a question. I've been asked to use a spare room in a nursing home to cut the resident's hair. I'm a mobile hairdresser, only dry cuts. Do I need to be aware of anything legal? I have public liability.
Yeah, the insurance is a really good one. I would definitely be careful of that. No, because I mean, you may well want to ask for a license for that room to use it for that specific day, for those specific times. So then you know that you've got the rights and it doesn't get cut off one day. That probably would be a really good idea for you, because then it protects your business. But no, there's no other legal obligations that you need to have in place. But yeah, ask them for a license for that, for the use of that room. Even if it's only for an hour every Tuesday, at least you know then that they can't mess you around.
Yeah, good stuff. Hobus Pobus. Oh, exciting. So the van idea. Thank you. And P.S. My name is Hobus Pobus. Yeah, I keep calling you I keep calling you Hippo I keep calling you Hobus Pobus, but you are Hippopotobus to me, don't worry about it. That's great. Beginning to learn to drive soon. So thinking about mobile salon. That's no dramas there. You have got no lease issues there. And April says thank you. Good stuff. Right then. So there's no more questions coming, but I've got a couple more that I think are kind of pertinent and interesting. Maybe not to anybody that's right here right now, and maybe it is. And I think this is potentially one of those questions that people will Pia says good advice. Thank you, Denise. People might be looking for, and I'm going to ask this question. It's a bit of a glum one, but we're going to go with it anyway. What do people need to think about? I mean, you've alluded to this already, but if they're going to close a salon due to COVID and they're in a lease and all these kind of problems, what do they need to do, Denise?
You've got loads of options. That's the first thing you need to know. And not all of them are going to cost you a lot of money either. So don't get stuck in the thought that you are screwed and that there's nothing you can do, because you really aren't. And there's loads of things you can do. So obviously you can look and see how long you've got left in your lease. If it's coming up to the end and you really, really don't want to sell the business or anything like that, then you can walk away. But you're probably going to need to strip out all of the fixtures and fittings, and that's going to start costing you money. So if you've got a couple of years left, as we spoke about earlier, you might want to think about selling the business. That's a good idea. Also, if you've got a break coming up in your lease, double check your lease and see whether or not there's those functions to get out of the business, because a break's not going to cost you any money. You might well have to strip out the fixtures and fittings, but you could sell them. There's loads of different people that are after old fixtures and fittings to start their own business. You could also, we've talked about selling it, so you could assign the lease to somebody else and that would pass on the obligations to them. But you might want to be careful about the fact that you might have to become a guarantor, because that can screw people up. We talked to Lee Stafford about that a couple of weeks ago, and he got caught out on that. But there's loads of ways around that too. So if you're going to do that, really speak to a surveyor about how they can set that up so that you don't then have lots of obligations forever. And then you could think about a surrender. And what would happen with a surrender if you've got a couple of years left in your lease? I would say sell, but if you don't want to and you've got some time left on your lease and you need to do a surrender, then what the landlord...
Oh, we lost Denise. Hopefully she'll be back in a second. I'll do some filling until she comes back. I'm going to reckon that her phone battery's died. I don't know why. I've got that inner feeling that her phone battery went, with the abruptness of cutting off like that. Oh no, she's back. She's back. There we go. I don't know. We lost you, Denise. We thought you. I said I was just doing some filling. It's okay. We carry on.
Sorry, I was like, oh, yeah. So if you really don't want to sell and you want to, and you could go to your landlord and you could negotiate a surrender of your lease. And the worst case scenario is that you'd have to pay rent for the remaining time left that you've got on your lease. But the best case scenario is that you could negotiate a surrender premium for 6 months, a year's worth of rent, or you could find somebody else that could take on the lease and slip right in, but you could surrender it and they could re-grant a whole new lease to that new person. So there's loads and loads of different ways of getting out of it that don't necessarily cost you a lot of money, and also you could actually make some money out of it. But I would implore people to look at selling. You really don't have to walk away with nothing.
Very good advice. And I don't know about you guys watching this now, but would have never have thought about selling in that specific instance. It would have been my first kind of just fold it, you know. And so yeah, I mean that's cracking.
That's another good thing that you've just said, actually, because some people set up the leases in a business name, and that then means that you can sell that business, so the lease goes with it, so you don't have to then sell all the fixtures and fittings together with the right to assign the lease, and then there's time delays and blah blah blah. If you've got the lease set up in a limited company, sell the limited company.
Yes, very, very good advice. Yeah, something that I actually have been talking about today, not with Denise, but with someone else. But I mean, you know, there's lots to these things, isn't there? And I think it's just great. There's some, just to kind of give you guys some insight, for anyone that didn't join at the beginning, I was talking about, you know, bringing on people who are within the kind of hair industry, who aren't necessarily going to teach you to blow dry or do, you know, highlights or whatever, but are going to help you, you know, further your career, or, you know, give you new insights and new confidence to kind of reach out and take hold of your own career and run with it. And there's a few other people who I'd like to try and bring on, you know, but we'll bring Denise back again. And some of you guys may be further along with your journeys at that point and have bigger questions. So, or, you know, different questions, or ultimately get in contact with Denise, who I'm going to put right at the bottom of the feed at the moment, her Instagram. Make sure you go and give her a follow, and any questions that you've got, just DM her. She's absolutely brilliant at getting back to you. So Hippopotibus has said to Tony that she can be a franchisee of her new camper van salon empire, which is fantastic. Great idea. Awesome channel. Don't forget to hit the thumbs up. Thank you very much, Angela. Tony's appreciating the idea from Hippopotibus. Where are we? Hippopotibus, maybe it's like an ego thing. If your hair salon is failing, you I can't read that word. Just subconsciously. Well done. Don't want to sell, and yeah, rather than see it for, yeah, it probably is a bit of that as well. I mean,
this has literally happened to a client that I found on Clubhouse a couple of months ago, and he was just going to walk away from a salon, and I got him on the phone and I just convinced him to sell, because it's like 50 grand that he's getting for selling the business rather than just walking away. And for me, it's a no-brainer.
I mean, that's fantastic, isn't it? And Frida says thank you. So I think we'll call it a night. We don't want to go ruin every single aspect of the financial and legal implications of the property side of business tonight. We'll save some more juicy questions that I've got lined up here for another night. I'll bring Denise back again, probably towards the end of the year, and maybe another bunch of you guys will have some different questions by then. You'll all have leases that Denise has set up for you, and it's all good stuff. So I'm just, Denise, what is your thing? Because it's gone straight out of my head. I'm going to put it straight in here.
Find.surveyors.
At find. I'm not sure if that's how it's surveyors. I'll just double check that. 2 seconds. The joys of being dyslexic, you know. So
always fun.
Yeah, it's always fun. I mean, I think that's right. Is that right? There we go. At find.surveyors. There we go. At the bottom of the chat is Denise's Instagram. Copy it down now. You've got a few minutes until I end the broadcast, and it will disappear. Screenshot your phones, write it down however you can get it. Get it over to Instagram, give Denise a follow, save Denise in your phone. You know, I know that we all follow everybody on Instagram these days, but, you know, it's really fantastic to have these things, you know, cemented in your phones so that you don't lose Denise's contact details should you need it. If you feel like you are a hidden employee, if you feel like you've accidentally got hidden employees and you need to straighten out your business, you need to get on the phone to Denise tomorrow and make sure that she can straighten it all out for you. And I will be back tomorrow night, 9 p.m. it would have been Paul colouring the cut that I did last Wednesday, for any of you that saw that, but that's not going to be happening because Paul's back is not going well. So I will be colouring the haircut I did last week. And then Paul will be joining us, comparing, high on medication, so he might be a bit slurry, but yeah, he's really struggling at the moment. But I know you all love him dearly, and we all kind of, you know, sending him best wishes. He's seeing a superb chiropractor tomorrow, so he might be slurring, or he might be chipper as anything and ready to rock and roll. Who knows? Maybe he'll crack his back into place and he'll be happy as Larry. Good stuff. Listen, Denise, you have been a absolute superstar tonight. Very insightful. I know everybody that joined us will be feeling the same as I do right now, and every time I listen to you, Denise, I feel like I've learned something. So I massively appreciate you giving your time up tonight, and for all the help that you've given me over the last few weeks. It's from the bottom of my heart, much appreciated. So good night, everybody. Look after yourself, and I'll see some of you again tomorrow.
Night,
ciao.
everyone.